Why is Dominion class action important to the common citizen?
Well, we're learning a lot, and I don't think we're ever going to be the same. That's if we can even get through this. We may never be the same because we may not get through this. This could be the death of the nation. This could lead to civil war. This could be disastrous. However, if we can keep it together, I don't think that any precinct is going to have a shortage of poll watchers ever again. Most people don't know who their state representative is. They don't know who their local state senator is. But I think from here on out, we're going to start to figure out who our local legislator is, now that we all know that it's really up to the state legislature to pick the electors that vote in the electoral college. Now, every state has agreed that the popular vote tells their state legislators who to send. However, based upon the experience that we've all just suffered, I think we're going to be a little more in tune in terms of our state elections, particularly our presidential elections, and the validity of those elections in terms of being able to tell our state legislators who to send. So I think it's important that people get educated, get involved, at least understand the constitutional framework that we're in. So that's reason number one, is to sort of educate the population as to what our rights are so that we start taking personal responsibility instead of waiting for a leader to tell us what to do. We'll just get a copy of the Constitution and read it and understand it and get on the internet and ask your friends about it and talk about it and get involved at whatever level you feel comfortable getting involved in and make sure that this never happens again. Well, part of that is these entities that are interacting with the machinery of our elections still asserting that they're a private actor or a private entity. So even as we sit now, Dominion Voting Systems is filing motions to dismiss our lawsuit claiming that they're not a public actor, that they're not a state actor, that they're just a private company essentially providing machines, some technology, some advice, but not becoming part of the framework of the election. Well, that's ridiculous. In fact, their advertisements say, we are more than a vendor. We are your partner. So when you partner with government to run an election, you become a state actor. You don't have to be a state actor. Nobody forced Mark Zuckerberg to put $1 billion into the election, but having done so makes Mark Zuckerberg a state actor. If you want to put $1 billion into the next election, Jim, that's good. I'm happy for you. But you'll become a state actor, meaning that you owe everybody their constitutional rights. And the one thing that we're learning, which apparently even these big companies don't know, apparently judges don't even know, much less the population, is that the one shared right that we all have as registered voters, not everybody, but as registered voters, is the right to vote for president and vice president. Now, if you look at that historically, we carved that right out. That was not an initial constitutional right. In the old days, the United States Congress would essentially pick the president. They would vote. And although there might be a popular vote, which was also limited by the states, to send representatives to the United States House of Representatives, or even back then the senators weren't voted in until the Constitution was amended. But over time, voting rights were expanded, and each state essentially over time agreed that the popular vote of each state would inform the state legislatures of each respective state which electors to send to the electoral college. So that's a right that we all have. Our state right to vote for our U.S. House of Representatives, our representatives to that House, or our senators to the United States Senate, that's still a state election. Although those are federal officers, it's still the state determining who to send. But for purposes of the president and the vice president, everybody in the country now who's registered gets to vote for those positions. Now, not only the president and the vice president, but also the commander-in-chief. So that's a shared right. So when someone's voting for president in Alaska, you probably know who's going to win Alaska. Fine. If another person, particularly a state actor, in Georgia or Michigan or Pennsylvania, is violating the Constitution with regard to the election of the president, well, now you're affecting that person's right in Alaska. So when Georgia had their Senate runoff, well, that was their Senate runoff. And although maybe someone from Alaska is upset about it, and maybe they think that wasn't the proper way to proceed, or whatever the case may be, they don't have standing to object. But when certain state actors in Georgia or Pennsylvania or Arizona or whatever state we're talking about, when certain state actors start violating the constitutional rights of everyone with regard to the election of the president and vice president, well, then that does affect not every person, not all the people, but registered voters who have been given the right to vote for president. That affects everybody. So what we're saying is that any registered voter in America, particularly as a class, as a big group, and we are a big group, from well over 30 states, and soon we'll have all 50 states. But when certain state actors from different states start violating the rights of essentially every registered voter in America, well, then those people have a right to come together, file a lawsuit against those particular state actors. Maybe not the state of Georgia, maybe not the state of Michigan or the state of Pennsylvania, but the particular state actors that are violating the Constitution, or private entities that have become state actors because of their involvement in the election. So that's what we're demonstrating, is that we all have certain rights that we don't even know about. We all need to step up and start doing our part to ensure election integrity. But in the end, if there are certain state actors that are violating everyone that is registered to vote, the right of those people to vote, then we have to be able to take action against those individuals and not just wait for somebody from Georgia to do it or wait for somebody from Michigan to do it. We have people from those states, but it's up to all of us to call these actors onto the carpet. And just by the act of filing this lawsuit, if a particular state actor is determined to have violated the Constitution, well, that in and of itself will be enough to tell the population what that person's all about. Maybe they have to resign, maybe they'll just pay the judgment, maybe they'll win re-election. But when a particular state actor has violated the Constitution, then that in and of itself is sort of demonstrative of what that person's all about and how they need to be viewed in the future.
You mentioned that there's 160 million registered voters in America, or approximately that number, whose rights were violated during the election. How would those individuals join the class action?
Well, at this point, we're requesting that those who are interested in joining the class fill out an affidavit, get it notarized, and mail it to us. Now, that accomplishes several things. First of all, when we get the statement, it is under oath. So if someone was trying to infiltrate us or make us look bad or send us false information, I doubt someone would do it under oath. And so we want people that are serious. Ultimately, the case should evolve where it shouldn't require such an effort to join the class, but the class hasn't been certified officially. So we're just joining plaintiffs at this point. And I mean, we're up past 160 plaintiffs, and we have over 170 affidavits, so we have to add 20 more. And then another month from now, we'll probably add 50 more. And then another month after that, we might add another 100. So at this point, we're requesting that people fill out affidavits until the class gets certified. So that tells us that they're over 18, that they're a registered voter. It tells us they're from a particular state. And it gives us some details about how they feel like their particular right to vote for president and vice president has been violated. And some of them are highly detailed and lengthy with attachments. Others are basically simple and a little formalistic, but they're all the same. They're all heartfelt, and they give us the information that we need to be able to put them in to the lawsuit as plaintiffs. So it's a couple of hoops that you have to jump through, but in the end, not too bad. And certainly when we get the affidavit, it's all the information that we need to be able to plug you in.
What's next for us in the class action?
We're in the middle of marching through motions to dismiss, which is very common in a federal case. Practically every federal case starts with a complaint followed by a motion to dismiss. Now, we've just filed our amended complaint, and now the magistrate is requesting that the parties file responses with regard to that issue as to whether we're going to be able to amend the complaint, which we should be able to amend freely. So I suspect that the court's going to allow us to amend the complaint, and then there'll be another round of motions to dismiss. The first round will probably be deemed moot, and then there'll be another round of motions to dismiss, which is fine. It makes us get our case together. It allows us to demonstrate to the court that the case has merit and that there's substantial evidence behind it. And we're able to attach a lot of the public records that we're amassing and in response to these motions to dismiss. So it feels like we're kind of bogged down a little bit, but it's not unusual. And since we're not trying to stop an election or ask for some extraordinary relief, we're just able to march along and do all the things that we need to do to basically set up the case. Because once we get past the motions to dismiss, and we will, then the parties are going to have to file an answer. They're going to have to respond to discovery. We're going to be setting depositions, and that's going to take a while. That could take 6 months to a year just to get into the discovery portion of the case. So at this point, I could say that we're still in the preliminary stages only because we haven't started discovery yet. But that will come as we get through these motions to dismiss.
What's the overall goal of filing the class action lawsuit against Dominion and Facebook and others?
There are many goals. And so I'll just jump around because there are just too many to order correctly. The first goal is to be able to have an election that we all feel good about, which we have done all of my adult life. There have been some problems here and there, and there's been some controversy, but I think we've just developed a system that people don't trust, and they're all associated with these voting machines and the introduction of computers into the tabulation of our votes, which, as we've come to find out, aren't as scientific as we initially thought. And I've sort of individually thought that for years. And I remember when Colorado brought these touchscreen voting machines into its procedure right after the turn of the century. And I remember voting on these touchscreens thinking, this is just not right. I don't feel that there's a guarantee that this vote is even going to be counted in the way that I'm voting. I just had that suspicion, and so did many others. So as this has evolved, 2016, nobody thought President Trump won legitimately. Now, 2020, nobody thinks President Biden was voted in legitimately. So what's going to happen in 2024? When are we going to get to the point where we have a system that's verifiable, that we can immediately check, that everyone feels confident about? One of the plaintiffs made a very good point to me over the telephone a couple of days ago. These apps for sports betting, they're following all kinds of games all over the world. And when someone gains 3 yards on a play in a football game, that's immediately put into the betting app, and the points are calculated, and everyone can see them on their phone immediately and calculate how many fantasy points they have immediately. But we can't develop a system that's verifiable, that everyone feels comfortable about. And so as a part of that goal, we want to ensure that every person who's registered to vote gets to vote, and their vote is counted, and it's essentially what we all agree on. One person, one vote. Count them in one day, like we used to, and have the results verifiable within a day or so. Now, how can we do that in this case? I'm not sure that we can come up with a procedure in the case to ensure what we're talking about. But by holding the state actors that are involved in this case to the fire, by holding their feet to the fire, then that will encourage other states in the future to develop a system that does work. Because that's what's going to happen. We're just going to keep suing each other until we get it right. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. I mean, you think about Brown v. Board of Education. You know, we're talking about in the 50s, it was so obvious that the disparity in where educational resources went was so gross that something had to be done about it. But that didn't get fixed because they won that case. That took, and we're still battling that. Here we are 60, 70 years later, still battling that. We still need to constantly work on the allocation of resources so that it's fair across the board. Well, that's what we need to do with voting. We need to try different things. Maybe the federal court needs to get involved. However it works, we need to evolve away from what we're doing now into something that works. And if it's blockchain, or it's back to paper ballots, or it's some sort of computer tabulation system that's verifiable immediately instead of using this software that's patented and you know has all of these proprietary elements to it. Well, that's what we need to get away from. So I don't have any animosity against Dominion Voting Systems, Inc. It's just a corporation to me, but their systems are private. They're proprietary. So anytime someone wants to go in there and take a look at the machines, well, they object. And they've got software agreements with the different counties and states that require the different counties and states to not give over the information, and in fact to defend Dominion from giving over the information. And we're seeing how that's all working out in Mariposa County in Arizona. Not very well. Even if they count every vote, and it was exactly like they said, well, why is it taking 3 or 4 months to come to that conclusion? We'll see if they counted every vote correctly. But why is it taking all of this gyration to be able to verify the vote? So I think with all the smart people we have involved, all of this interest that's been generated by this election, and the technology that we do have, and our track record of being able to run these elections in the past with success, I think we can figure out a way. I don't have that way. I'm not the genius that's going to figure it out. But I'm going to be vigilant in watching these state actors for the rest of my career. As long as it lasts, I'm going to be vigilant on watching these state actors now that I know myself a little bit more about the Constitution and what our rights are. And those are developing. I mean, we're being told that we don't have standing. Well, I disagree. I don't think courts or lawyers, much less the population, fully realize this national right that we all share to vote for the president and vice president, to vote for the commander-in-chief, male or female. We have a national right among those who are registered to vote for that office. And so that is a cherished right, carved out over time. And so the purpose of the lawsuit is to hold those responsible who screwed it up in this last election so that those responsible in future elections will have more of an incentive to get it done right. And get it done right doesn't mean making sure your candidate wins. Getting it done right means every registered voter that cast a legitimate ballot ought to have their ballot counted, and then you count it up, and the person that has the most votes wins. That's our goal.